Hello and welcome to AgPhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, there's so many things going into next year that we have to do to improve efficiency if we want to be profitable. One of those things is making sure we get to use all of the nitrogen we put on and don't have any loss. We're going to talk about nitrogen stabilizers and how they could help your bottom line on your farm.
Undoubtedly for next year, you're going to use herbicides in your crops to control weeds, but the question is, can you use some of those residual herbicides already this fall and get better weed control and better yields next year? We'll talk about it later in the show.
Well, you'd better if you want to control our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop it, and it may include, a big hint here, may include a fall treatment. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about what is a herbicide.
Well, the obvious definition of a herbicide is something that kills weeds. It's a product that kills weeds. So right away you think, okay, that would be a chemical, right? Well, yes, it would be a chemical, but when you think about a herbicide, the big thing is we're trying to kill weeds, we're not trying to kill animals, we're not trying to kill fish, and we're not trying to hurt people. So the nice thing with herbicides and how they've developed over the last several decades is that there's been a huge focus on what can we do that's going to be safe to humans, but deadly to certain plants.
Roundup is the most popular herbicide in the entire world, or the active ingredient glyphosate. Let's go with that. Anyway, if you look at glyphosate in particular, it works on an enzyme that's found only in plants. So there's no possible physical way it could ever hurt a human being or an animal. That's awesome, and that's one of the reasons why it is so popular, because it's so safe.
Well, and you look at the safety on a number of herbicides out there and how they were developed. It's kind of interesting, like one of the very popular pre-emerge herbicides that we use, or pre-plant incorporated herbicides, is called Treflan. And Treflan is kind of famous among farmers because it has a yellow color that if you spill it on your clothes, well, your clothes are pretty much going to be yellow. There's really no washing that yellow out. I mean, you can try to, but it's a pretty good dye on clothing. Well, actually, that's what Treflan was developed for. It was developed as a clothing dye, and they found out that, oh, it actually kills certain weeds too, but it's safe to other plants. And that's one of the big things. Brian talked about Roundup. Roundup was famous when it first came out because it was a non-selective herbicide, meaning it would kill all plants. So whether it was a broadleaf weed, like a cockleburr or a velvet leaf, or a grass weed like a foxtail or a brome grass, well, it could kill all of those. Well, then there were crops developed you could spray Roundup in that it wouldn't kill the crop, but it would kill the weed. Anyway, what I'm getting at is when you have a herbicide that will kill one plant but not another, it's called a selective herbicide, and that's mainly what farmers are using, is products that will kill the broadleaf weeds but not their grass crops like corn or wheat, or kill the grass plants and not the broadleaf crops like cotton or soybeans.
The reason why, too, we wanted to talk about safety a little bit with these types of products, these herbicides, is because, again, you know, as soon as you hear the word pesticide or herbicide, or for that matter, chemical, you know, a lot of people are just going to assume it's bad, and what we're trying to say here is don't just assume it's bad, don't just assume it's harmful. I know there are a lot of people running around saying, oh, all pesticides are bad. Well, that's obviously ridiculous, because everything in our environment is harmful. Everything. I mean, the gasoline you pump in your car is probably 50 times more dangerous than any herbicide we'll put on our fields. Okay, but people pump the gasoline in their car every day. So the point is, you got to look at the good that's being done out there and the actual safety of the products we're using. Another important thing you can look at is LD50. That stands for lethal dose 50%. And the point is, when you look at LD50, and let's say you compare a lot of these herbicides to things that we'll commonly use, like salt or caffeine, you'll find that many of the products we're using on the farm are just as safe, if not even safer, than the caffeine that you put into your body every day. So you got to take a look at the big picture here, and we just want you to understand, as farmers, we're trying to do everything we can to produce more food for our growing world, but also to do it as safely as possible. Well, you may need a herbicide if you want to have good control of our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up later in the show.
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, Agro Liquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
There's no clock on this job. Just the timeless hands of intuition and effort, ticking from within. An endless cadence of committed work, from the passing of Mother Nature's final frost to the hanging dew at harvest. Around here, wheels are always turning, and watches need no winding, because success never rests.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
When it comes to efficiency, we have to look at our fertility inputs into our farm and figure out not only where can we cut some dollars out, but where can we fully utilize the dollars that we are spending. I look at nitrogen and I think about the 3 means of nitrogen loss, whether that's leaching, volatilization, or denitrification. We have to eliminate those three things. We can't afford nitrogen loss on our farms this year.
But the good news here is there are nitrogen stabilizers. Before we get to that though, let's just first go back to the real basics here. You've got to know what your soil can hold in the first place. So look at your cation exchange capacity, make sure you're testing your soil for that, and take 10 times your CEC, and that will tell you roughly how much nitrogen your soil can hold at any one time. So here's just a quick example. Let's say I had a cation exchange capacity or CEC of 6. 6 times 10 is 60 pounds. Let's say I already have 20 pounds in the soil. That means I can apply 40 pounds. But you say, whoa, I want to raise 200 bushel corn. I want to put 200 pounds of nitrogen out. Okay, well, you can only put 40 out right now. Well, if I put a nitrogen stabilizer with it, is that enough? Can I then put my 200 pounds out? No. I mean, you certainly can't exceed the number by 5 times.
Okay, well, I'm just going to stop you right there, because if you've got a CEC of 6, you're going to have to spoon feed. There's no question. There's no question to it. And when it comes to using a nitrogen stabilizer, yes, that's going to help, but you still need to spoon feed. So here you go, 2015. That's the year you're finally going to do it. You're finally going to do it this way. Put a little bit on here, a little bit more here, and a little bit more there. You say, I may not have the equipment I need to do that, then you need to invest in equipment, because we've got to be able to do that.
Okay, but here's the whole thing. When you've got a lighter soil like that, I mean, a low cation exchange capacity means you have a lighter soil, maybe lower organic matter. In that case, you are at risk for volatilization and you're at risk for leaching. All right, when you get to real heavy soil, because a lot of people, like in our area, I mean, they might have a cation exchange capacity, like the ground we're standing on right here, cation exchange capacity is probably 35, and I'm only going to raise 200 bushel corn. So you say, oh, I got no problems. Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, I have no problems. I don't need a nitrogen stabilizer then because my ground is heavy. Well, You still do, because here's why. If you lay the nitrogen on top of the ground, you still have the potential loss of volatilization. Even if you lightly work it in, you can still lose it to volatilization. The other big risk is denitrification, because like the ground we're standing on, very flat, very heavy, water doesn't move through it very quickly. So what happens? We get a lot of moisture, and all of a sudden your nitrogen denitrifies. Okay, that's not a good thing either. So our point here is whether you have light soil or heavy soil, whether you're in low rainfall or high rainfall, there are reasons why you may consider using a nitrogen stabilizer. And let me also say too, it might not be the same nitrogen stabilizer. There are many different products for many different uses.
All right, and there's another form of nitrogen we haven't talked about yet that is getting put on millions of acres across the country right now. It's manure. And when you think about manure, a lot of guys just think, well, I got manure, I gotta spread it. It's going out in one shot because I have to do it in the fall before I get my crop out there. That's my chance to do it. Hey, you may be pushing it. There's no question about it. If you have to get that nitrogen out now, you may not have your soil everywhere across every field that's ready to hold that nitrogen. Fortunately, with manure, it's going to come available a little more slowly than it would if you're putting out, anhydrous, or you're putting out urea or liquid 28%, something like that. But still, there are a couple of stabilizers, whether it's more than manure or Instinct 2, that you could put on that manure. I would highly recommend that, because you think about how soon is your crop going to be taking up that nitrogen? Well, quite a few months down the road. So you want to make sure you're protecting it, whether it's in a commercial form or in manure.
Look, in our opinion, in most cases, you're going to want to use a nitrogen stabilizer, but this is one of the things you probably want to just try out on your farm a little bit first, run some trials yourself. But all we can tell you is this. Everybody's looking at, how do I cut expenses? And I get that. Well, your biggest expense on the farm in most cases is fertilizer. So the number one target is nitrogen. Everybody says, I want to cut back my nitrogen. All right, but there's only a limit. I mean, you have to have so much nitrogen to raise a good crop. The point is, whatever nitrogen you do put out there, we want to make sure it stays there. So a lot of times what guys are doing is they're cutting back their nitrogen rate and using a nitrogen stabilizer to make sure the nitrogen stays there and stays in an available form. But here's the other side I want you to be thinking about. Okay, if we've used less nitrogen and there's less chance of loss, isn't that a better thing for the environment? As farmers, we got to be real careful, because we're less than 1% of the population. That other 99%, they're really watching what we do. So look at your cation exchange capacity, use a nitrogen stabilizer, try to keep that nitrogen in the ammonium form so it's more stable than the nitrate form. And overall, we should have not only as good or better yields and slightly better profitability, but the other side of it is a safer environment.
All those things are certainly good, Brian, but we can't maximize our yield potential in our field unless we can control weeds like our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDrive Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan run times drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Welcome to the 30-second tour of your local Poet plant. Local producers sell us tons of their grain. We grind it, mix it with water and special enzymes. The result is fermented, distilled, and dehydrated until it's 200 proof alcohol. Corn oil is extracted, and protein and nutrients are condensed, dried, and turned into animal feed, bringing our tour to an end with high-protein feed and cleaner-burning high-octane fuel. Visit poet.com to learn more.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a SoilMax Gold Digger tile plow. SoilMax tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with AgLeader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a SoilMax Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with SoilMax. Visit soilmax.com.
My data is mine, not mined.
Mine to share.
Mine to keep.
It's mine when I want it.
Mine where I want it.
And only mine. My data is mine to analyze.
Mine to put to work.
Mine to control.
It's mine.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Darren and I get a lot of questions each year about fall residual herbicides. So today we wanted to talk a little bit about where you really should use a fall residual herbicide and where you shouldn't. And then also, what are the product choices and what rates should you be using?
All right, well, first of all, I'll say this. The ground that we're standing on right now, we'll never use a fall residual herbicide on because it's susceptible to flooding. And, you know, it's some of this ground that we had talked about earlier in the show, it's pretty heavy, and so it can get a little sticky in the spring. It's kind of high on the magnesium on the base saturation test. So it would be really nice if we could do it in the fall because it's dry in the fall, and in the spring a lot of times it's wet, so it's tough to get in. But the downside is if it could ever flood, you don't want to put that herbicide out because we don't want to take a chance. Number one, environmentally speaking, we don't want to take a chance that any of that herbicide could wash into the river. Number two, economically speaking, why spend the $10 to $25 an acre you may want to spend on fall herbicides if you know you're not going to be able to use it? Okay, so here's where we would like to see fall residual herbicides used. Fields that we know we're going to get into in the spring early. If we can get that fall application on, hey, this is a field that could go early in the spring and it could be some of our first planted ground. That's where we're going to try and target fall residual herbicides.
In addition to that, I would look at winter crops, so whether it's winter wheat or winter canola or something like that, any winter crop, you'd like to put your residual herbicide down in the fall. And then any fields that you probably have more weeds than you would like, let's just put it that way. So if I've got a real weed problem, I definitely don't want to get any weeds started and have some weeds going to seed. You got to get after those things as quickly as you can. What we would typically say is it's going to take 10 to 20% higher rate in the fall than it is the spring. Well, if you're already using the maximum label rate in the spring, you can't go any higher for fall. But let's say I'm using an 80% rate in the spring. If I used a 100% rate, and I know it costs a little bit more, but if you get the work done in the fall, maybe it's worth it for you, and then maybe it turns out just fine. So I don't think I'd be real concerned about that as long as I spray late in the fall. That's the other big thing that I would point out. So Darren already mentioned you want to get to and spray fields that you're going to plant early in the spring so you can get that crop canopy and get the weed control in the spring, but also you want to wait and let the ground get cold in the fall so you don't have a bunch of weeds that are going to use up that fall residual herbicide.
Well, that works as long as you don't have a whole bunch of winter annuals that you're also trying to kill with a burn down aspect of this fall herbicide application.
But maybe in some cases, if you've got those winter annuals, that's where you'd mix a Banville or 2,4-D along with your fall residual herbicide. So let's talk real quick, like corn, you could use Harness, Surpass, Outlook Dual. You could also use Triple Flex or Sure Start. If any of these products are labeled in your area for fall application, I don't have any big issue using them. Again, as long as we've met the other criteria where we know we're going to plant it, not going to flood out, that type of thing. And make sure you use the full rate.
Okay, well, Triple Flex, Sure Start, yes, you're going to get some burn down activity with those. But the other ones you aren't. It's just residual control. So it's really just working on seeds that are going to germinate and pop up next spring. When we're looking at the soybean products, you look at the Authority products, the Valor products, we're seeing a lot of guys do that for winter annual control.
But they're using higher rates.
Yeah, they're using higher rates, and a lot of times if you get it done early enough that you can still use Roundup and have that be effective, that would be fine. Otherwise, we're seeing a lot of 2,4-D going on in the fall with the Authority and Valor products, and that is really hot at controlling those winter annual type weeds. You get a lot of burn on those weeds. So we've had pretty good luck with that where guys have big infestations, especially in no-till and reduced-till situations. And you can use those higher rates of the Authority and Valor products so you get even a little bit more residual.
You can also use Treflan, Sonalan, or Prowl in the fall, and you can use those in combination with Valor or Authority. Turning to wheat, we just really suggest here, use a pre-emerge herbicide. So if it's spring wheat, use a pre-emerge herbicide either in the spring or fall. If it's winter wheat, absolutely use a pre-emerge herbicide in the fall. You'll get a lot better weed control. We see wheat fields all over the country that get hurt because they don't get weed control early enough. Wheat is real similar to corn. If you have weeds in there early, it hurts yield pretty bad, especially with a lot of the grasses. So we talk about things like Prepare, for example, maybe Sharpen if you had a broadleaf issue. Otherwise, we're looking at Olympus, Maverick, Outrider, or PowerFlex.
Yeah, in continuous wheat areas, this has just been huge. This has been tremendous for guys in terms of yield potential for the field and also making weed control so much easier in the spring. These grasses that germinate in the fall, whether it's jointed goat grass, any of the cheat grass or brome species, I mean, they are really difficult weeds to control when we get to spring because they've got a big root system already. Chances are they've already tillered out. They're going to be almost impossible to completely control. But we can do an awesome job on them in the fall if we get things done on time.
Well, once again, fall residual herbicides certainly can be used. Just make sure you're using them in areas that aren't going to flood out. You're going to get them planted real early in the spring. You know exactly what crop you're going to be planting, and then make sure you're using full rates in the fall because it will take a little bit higher rate in the fall than in the spring.
Now, one of those weeds that we may be after in the fall is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Get ready to take control of weeds like never before. Enlist will build on the Roundup Ready system with new herbicide and trait technology, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm.
Our Weed of the Week is Henbit.
Well, when you think about these winter annual weeds that we were just focusing on with the fall residual herbicides, yes, you've got to do a good job in the fall. Otherwise, they can get pretty thick and tougher to kill in the spring.
Because it's a winter annual.
You know, when you look at Henbit, there's a few things that stand out. It doesn't really have that massive of a root system. It's kind of a fibrous root system, but it smells. There's definitely an odor to Henbit. It's in the mint family. And when you see Henbit out in your field, getting after it in the fall with these residuals like in corn, we like Triple Flex and Sure Start. They're probably the best. In soybeans, you know, a Trefline or Prowl that you could do in the fall are pretty good.
I wouldn't do any of that stuff. I'd just spray it with 2,4-D in the fall. When it's a winter annual, it's going to come up in the fall. Let's kill in the fall. Use Banville before you go to corn. Use 2,4-D before you go to wheat or to soybeans, and you should be in pretty good shape.
And Sharpen would be okay in front of wheat, but you're going to probably have to mix either some Roundup or 2,4-D with it to get more burn.
But here's the thing that I look at. As a soybean farmer, I understand that Henbit is a host to soybean cyst nematodes. That's really bad. I don't want to have to worry about cyst nematodes, so you've got to get this thing under control. If you're actually in the crop...
Not just in soybeans, but in all these other crops in your rotation.
Right, so then it doesn't host that in my off years. So let's talk about wheat because that's where we most commonly see Henbit. Sharpen, like Darren said, isn't the best on Henbit, so you got to look at post-emerge, do a really good job with Husky. You can also add some addition in there, and that will definitely help.
Post-emerge in soybeans, you know, you can do a pretty decent job with Roundup or Liberty. In the old days, we used to use a lot of Pursuit and Raptor and then mix in some Flex Star or Cobra. With that mixture, you can do a decent job on Henbit, especially if you get it small. Then when you look at corn, I really like Status post-emerge. If you didn't use Sure Start or Triple Flex pre-emerge, you could use Hornet post-emerge as well, but that is chemistry that's already in the Sure Start and Triple Flex, so don't use it twice in the same year.
And don't forget that spring and fall tillage a lot of times will help out on these winter annual weeds like Henbit.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
As fall tillage rolls along, one of the problems that many of us are trying to fix is compaction created by the planter. On a recent AgPhD radio show, we discussed the 2 best ways to eliminate such compaction. I'll address them in today's Iron Talk. When it's time to plant and soils are wet, you can only realistically wait so long. At some point, you just end up planting, even if conditions aren't perfect. With the size of planters growing dramatically and with central fill units becoming much more prevalent, the 4 tires taking the brunt of that weight are driven into your soil, creating ruts that severely limit the yield of the rows on either side of them. We have a 2-row combine for harvesting our small replicated research plots. Yield loss on those rows on either side of deep compaction can easily be 10 to 25% or much more. On 200 bushel corn, that could be 50 bushels. The 2 solutions are, number 1, to switch back to individual boxes for each row on the planter. This spreads out the weight load evenly across the planter. Or, number 2, is to use tracks on the planter rather than wheels to spread out the load. Of course, using both solutions would be the best of all, but since most people don't want to give up their central fill units, well, you can see the dilemma. Think about this going into the winter, especially if you're trying to fix compaction from your planter with a fall tillage pass right now. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Being a farmer means securing your land and livelihood for the future. Harvest Solutions from Capello USA have the grit to get you there. Our product lines for corn, sunflowers, and forage are designed for efficiency and longevity, preventing harvest loss while minimizing maintenance and downtime. To do everything you can to advance your farmland to the next generation, call us at 855-CAPELLO or visit us at capellousa.com. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
I've been involved in developing new technologies in agriculture for over 3 decades. The changing times demanded that we develop new and better equipment. Dry powder applications on seed can only be highly successful if they can be easily, effectively, and accurately applied to the target. That's where our company, Changing Times and CT Applicators, come into the picture. The innovative CT Applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, soybean inoculants, or other dry products. Remember, CT Applicators for the changing times.
We know that the future is liquid. Agriculture liquid fertilizers' constant research and development creates next-generation products that seem like science fiction. But the fact is, the yields, the sustainability, the food and fiber that our customers produce season after season is not a dream, but a reality. Agriculture liquid fertilizers, helping you grow the future.
No one understands your farm, your field, and your soil like you. I'm Myron Stein, and at Stein Seed Company, we know your field demands a choice. That's why Stein's corn breeding program combines our industry-leading genetics and superior standability with the most sought-after traits, giving you the best choices for maximum yield. Learn more about Stein's hybrid lineup by visiting steinseed.com or contacting your local Stein Seed dealer.
Closed captioning for AgPhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomic information, we invite you to tune in to the AgPhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Sirius XM Channel 80. That's the Rural Radio channel.
And don't miss the next AgPhD TV show, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Iron Talk, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching AgPhD.
American ethanol is made primarily from corn. Did you realize that the type of corn used for ethanol and livestock feed is much different than the sweet corn on your dinner table? For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.